Be seated, please. Welcome to our service this afternoon. Following our service, there is a reception in the hall downstairs. And the grace will be included in the service prayers this afternoon. Also, when the service is over, we invite you to exit this door after the family does, and then proceed to the hall down those stairs after the casket has been loaded into the funeral hearse. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in a time of trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth should change, though the mountains shake in the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble with its tumult. There is a river whose streams make glad the city of God, the holy habitation of the Most High. God is in the midst of the city. It shall not be moved. God will help when the morning dawns. Be still and know that I am God. Our help is in the name of the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The eternal God is your dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms. Dear friends, we are united today by a common sorrow, a common affection, and a common hope. We have come together to give thanks to the life of Bob Irvine, to remember the ways his life touched ours, and to entrust him into the keeping of God. We have also come to share the sorrow of those who mourn, and to offer them our care and support. And we are here to bear witness to our hope in Jesus Christ, who said, I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live, and everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. And so with faith in Christ, let us lift up our hearts to God, that the Lord may bless us with strength and peace. Let us all pray. Almighty God, you love us with an everlasting love. You know all about us. You know the thoughts of our hearts before our lips speak them. You are acquainted with all our ways. Help us to recall your loving kindness now as we remember Bob. For all that he was to us and for all that we were to him, we give you thanks. And though we see him no longer, yet he is with us in spirit and will continue in death to influence our lives. Give to us, O God, the assurance of your care and the peace in knowing that nothing in all creation, in life and in death, can separate us from your love. In the silence of this hour, O God, we lift our hearts to you for grace and help in a time of need. You are able to deliver us safely through the darkness of this present time into the light and peace of your presence. In your loving mercy, we place our trust through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. We're going to sing a number of hymns this afternoon, and our first hymn is In the Garden, and I would invite you to stand if you are able. Rachel forward to share some memories of her grandfather.
Hi everyone. For those who knew my grandpa, knew that he was an extraordinary man. And he loved his family and cherished them and the friends that were in his life. And give me the time and cherish the memories that we shared together. And he would take me to the barn and show me the cattle and the cows and play and hang around with me. And he impacted my life in so many ways. And although he's gone, he's never gone in my heart. And his love for wildlife and for nature and for the beauty that surrounded him, he always valued anything that was in his life and that came across him. And he loved Canada, and he would always give me his wildlife magazines and share the different foxes that he admired, or the wolves, or the landscapes and scenery. And I remember his slideshows that he would create from his trips up north, and he loved the Northwest Territories and the Yukon. And after about 2 hours of looking at a black bear, it gets a little dry sometimes. And you're still trying to find the beauty in the black bear that you've seen for the 10th time, but he loved stories, and he loved traveling, and he loved my grandma, and his passion for what he loved just inspired me to pursue what I love and to cherish my family in so many different ways and cherish the memories that we shared with him. And I was telling my dad earlier, I remember being in his living room, sitting on the floor, and he would make popcorn with us, and he would tell us stories from his childhood. And if you knew my grandpa, you know that he had a laugh and a smile that would just impact everyone and brighten their hearts. And he always knew how to lighten a room with a story. And I think that's what inspired me, was his ability to connect with people, whether it be a friend or a stranger. He always knew how to relate to somebody on a deeper level than just saying hello. And when I was in high school, I was really struggling with trying to figure out a career path. And everyone says go into something that you love doing and you want to continue every day. But that's really hard when you have to factor in money and choose a career that you can live off of and something that you're passionate about. And he knew that I was struggling with this, and he was quite older when I was in high school, but even in his 80s, he typed me a letter saying that if he could go back in time and choose a career, he would be a forest ranger, and he would protect the wildlife and ensure the hunters were fair and true and conserve the national parks. And he was very patriotic, but he was also very in tune with nature and with animals and with our country and the history that surrounded it. And I don't think I would have become the person that I am today with the interest that I have and the appreciation that I have for nature and for history and for how lucky we are in today's society without him, without his impact on my life. And his love for my grandma always inspired me, and through the hardships and the celebrations, he was always by her side no matter what. And he always kept moving forward, and I just hope that that presence and that impact that he had on my life stays with everyone here. And his love for family and the time that he gives to people and anyone who crosses his path, I hope that we can take that today and throughout our lives. So, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Heather is going to share with us now.
Thank you, Rachel. So some of this may be repetitive. As you all know, Dad died on New Year's Day, and it was a very short time ago to be here and standing here with a tribute. But the moment that I heard that he had died, I started to write out some things. And then when we met Rob the next morning, or afternoon, he said, does anybody have, there's a place for tribute? And I said, oh, I've written something. And I went back and read it and was like, that's a dribble. I'm not going to get up here and talk about it. So I really struggled with having a moment in time to write down, because it was a lot filling my heart of what I wanted to say about Dad. I'm sorry there. And for those of you that don't know me, I'm Heather. I'm Bob's second child, her daughter. And there are three of us, Dale and myself and my younger brother. And first off, I just want to thank you for being here, because your presence is the present. It is honoring our family and his legacy. And I just bless you for that. So, this is what I wrote early this morning. The first thing I remember Dad teaching me verbally was moderation. Moderation is the silken cord that runs between the pearly chains of virtue. He would quote this. I was pretty little. But I loved that quote. It really got my imagination fired. And moderation was a very strong theme in Dad's life. And you'll see it a lot in his poetry book. And I hope everyone here got one with the program. If you didn't, then pick one up. And the next thing he verbally taught me was honesty. I asked him what he thought was the most important thing between people. And he said, well, I would say honesty. To lie was actually anathema to him. It disgusted him. He thought lying was fantastically cowardly, stupid beyond belief, and the sign of someone mentally ill. Misspeaking or being confused or keeping a secret, that was acceptable. But just to lie, never. And I observed that Dad did have great relationships with his neighbors. They had a lot of fun. Everybody seemed to like him. And further, he and Mom honestly adored each other. So honesty became my North Star. Thirdly was gratitude. Gratitude and appreciation for the marvelous country of Canada. Dad was born in the Depression in 1926, and he was only 13 years old when the war started, and ultimately some of his friends fought and died in the war. It had a terrific impact on him. He was very aware of our freedom, and from a very tender age, he would teach me that I lived in this country that was amazing. It was free of tyranny. The landscapes were varied and beautiful. The wildlife was amazing. And I could be very proud because Shakespeare was a part of Canada. And what made up Canada was not only all of these things, but the characters within it. And goodness knows, Shakespeare was full of characters, many of which Dad has written about. Next, so those were the things that we were verbally reminded of, and that I remember him talking to me about. But as an adult now, I see that his life impacted me more deeply, perhaps simply because of the virtues that he lived with, and how he lived married for love. And so I sought that in my life. 2, work and play. Dad worked really hard, but at the end of the day, there was nothing he loved more than to play. And every night as a little kid, I looked forward to Dad coming in from the farm work and washing up before supper, because it was playtime, and he would grab us and tickle us. And as we got older, there were more games he'd introduce, so softball and hockey and soccer, and after doing our chores in the barn, we would play checkers. If it was in the winter and we were in the barn, we'd be playing hide and go seek, or Mother May I, or red light, green light. He would play games with us, and he would sing songs to us, which we learned to sing along to. And if it was a Saturday night, it had to be hockey night in Canada with buttered popcorn and Coke. And before, we would watch Don Mess's Jubilee, because as many of you know, Dad was a singer and a dancer, and he loved that music. On Sunday nights, it was Walt Disney and Ed Sullivan. So I really learned to love to play and to sing out loud and to be a good sport and to work hard, because he did. Next was respect. Dad paid respect first by being on time. He was a sterling man in that way. To be a few minutes early was to be on time. To be at the time was late. To be late was unacceptable. Respect was also paid by being well groomed. He would change out of his work clothes just to go into the village. His nails were trimmed, his clothes were clean, he smelled good, and he'd always have on one of his caps or his hats, and his eyes would always have a twinkle in them. He always presented himself very well, and on special occasions, he loved to dress up. There's a picture, that one, where Mom had made our dresses and her own dress, and we were getting ready for my Uncle John's wedding. And Dad made sure that there was a picture of us, because he was so proud of Mom and us, and getting dressed up and going to dance was one of his loved things. The next thing was enjoying the sweet things in life. If you know my dad, you know he had a terrific sweet tooth. So he didn't smoke or drink, but popcorn or ice cream or Rio Thompson's milk chocolate gingers did not stand a chance. If they came into the house, they were gone. And in the summertime, Dad would make us campfires so that we could roast marshmallows, because what's better than that? Right? So he had a terrific sweet tooth, and this is where moderation, the virtue of moderation, would be stretched a little bit. He wasn't always incredibly moderate when it came to candy. The next value of how Dad lived was travel. He loved it. When I was 10, he took Mom and Dale and I to Montreal in 1967 for Expo. And there's a picture here. That's it. Oh, if you go back one, just to show. Do you see the size of that Easter bunny? Oh. Sweet things. So the next one is when we were in Montreal for Expo. Now, I'm not entirely sure, but that trip made an incredible impression on me, including to never try to walk through a glass door again. We were leaving the hotel, and it looked like an open doorway, and I went to walk through it, and I was 10, and I hit it, and bounced backwards, falling down. My father laughed so hard. He thought it was very funny. I wasn't hurt. And I think, I'm not sure, but Dale, maybe you know, that he then took that picture in the reflection of that glass window. No, it was another.
That was a pavilion.
Oh, it was at the pavilion. All right. The travel bug stayed with Dad for the rest of his life, and he and Mum had incredible adventures all over the world, following their beloved Galloways and friends that they met through the Galloway Association. And I forget how many countries he would talk about they had visited, but I believe it was in the 20s. Then Dad had great delight in being physical. If you ever saw Dad running or skating or dancing, you'd know that he was just a joy to watch. He really lived by all of his senses, especially common. He cherished all forms of natural beauty, from rocks to peacocks, from streams to dreams, from music to movement, from sunsets to sunrises, from crafts to intricate machinery. Beauty touched him deeply. From winter to fall, every season and every part of the day had its own particular type of beauty, and he enjoyed it every time and would verbalize it. And because of how I was raised like this, for a long time, I honestly thought that people who didn't like winter were a little bit stupid or unimaginative, or in Dad's poetry book, his poem on winter, which is I think called The Joy of Winter, is 3 pages long. And it's wonderful. And I just want to read you a stanza. And this is so Dad. To stand on a hill when everything's still and look down on a peaceful town, the countryside's bright with a mantle so white that it pales an angel's gown. It's no wonder I got married in the winter to a man who taught me how to ski. Thanks, Preston. Preston's up there taking the video of this. Finally, one of the virtues that Dad lived by was his faith in God. Dad was a very spiritual person. Cultivating wisdom was foundational to him. He was a philosopher and a visionary, and all of this comes through in his poems. He loved to talk to me about God and death and the meaning of life and the hereafter. And we would talk about therapeutic touch, that we call TT, which is a healing modality that was designed for nurses. And I would talk to him about the things that I'd academically studied and the things that I'd experienced. And he would really listen and talk to me about them and tell me about his own experiences and his own visions and dreams. As a young woman navigating the very treacherous waters of life at times, it was my dad that gave me the best advice, period. And sometimes I would quote some of the advice that he'd given me, and people would say, "Oh, you were so lucky to have a father like that." And I know it. I wrote this little paragraph, and I'll just repeat it here and put it up on Facebook. It said, "Dad was simply an incredible man as a father, handsome, talented, playful, musical, honest, kind, athletic, protective of his wife and kids, progressively and actively, environmentally and socially conscious, a curious world traveler, a respected Galloway breeder, a very proud Canadian and independent thinker who was a poet at heart. His light, or his essence, at the best was unbeatable. Growing up with that was something good. I have nothing but gratitude for this man. He could always make me laugh." But at the end of his life, as he aged, it wasn't all roses. Dad had a couple of strokes and became notoriously difficult within the family, sometimes mean, argumentative, grand, harshly judgmental. And this was not the man that I grew up with. it really hurt beyond bearing sometimes. He went fully into his own world, which was a bit askew. And Mom dying was simply incomprehensible to him. But here's where his wisdom shone through. He accepted it, and he turned his emotions of anger or loss into doing what he could to make a tribute to her, and I thought that was brilliant. As his age progressed, Dad couldn't take care of himself any longer, and that too did not compute. It was unimaginable for him. As happens these days to so many caregivers, Dad got really angry with us kids. He was verbally abusive, and that was hard to take, even though we understood that it was from a neurological imbalance. Thankfully, the neurological rebalance happened with skilled medical care, and in this last year or more, Dad truly came back to being his sweet, open-hearted, music, playful, and very bright self. I enjoyed each and every visit with him in the hospital and NICU's long-term care. Thank God for them, and thank God for the family and this community that really helped me stay the course during the rough patches. Our visits evolved to looking like this. I would bring Dad a fillet of fish from McDonald's. We'd eat lunch together, then we'd read poems from Robert Service's book. And this book, and then he would fall asleep, and then he'd go to bed, and I'd give him therapeutic touch, TT, and he'd fall asleep. And I just want to tell you that this book is probably Dad's greatest possession in his library of books. All he read, he didn't read fiction, he just read history and geography and current events, world news, but he loved Robert Service's poems. He really believed the poems to be true and the ballads to be very lifelike. And he modeled his own writing after Robert Service. So I'm now going to end this tribute to Dad with two little bits of poetry. The first one is actually a song that Dale and I co-wrote. It's called The Grace of Heatherdale. And if you're a Galloway reader, you know that the Galloways were called the Heatherdales. It's actually a bagpipe song, very Celtic sounding, and Dad loved it when we sang it, but I'm just going to read it to you. It's our tribute to Allen Acres, the farm we grew up on here in Shakespeare. I sing of the land I grew up on. It touched the banks of the wee Avon, with sparkling streams and fields of green. My roots are deep and strong. We gazed on cows with newborn calf. We worked and sang and shared and laughed. We hand in hand cared for our land, our home, our shield, our staff. That land still holds my beating heart. Nature is a masterpiece of art, and family love fits like a glove. We were proud to play our part. As I lay down my weary bones, I think about the hills of home, sun on my face, blessed by God's grace. I'm safe, never alone. I sing of the land I grew upon. It touched the banks of the wee Avon, with sparkling streams and fields of green. My roots are deep and strong. Then, this final bit, I woke up with dreaming about early this morning. The words were filling my head like someone was speaking out loud to me in a very kind but firm way. You're not saying goodbye. You're saying hello to your Father's new being, his new light essence, and it is amplified. And I knew that it was true. All I had to do was remember what I saw only a few hours after Dad's death through a very powerful therapeutic touch session and vision, and dwell there whenever grief threatened to consume me. So, in apology or in total respect to Robert Service and his poem, The Cremation of Sam McGee, here are the words I heard in my head. There are wonders sensed through the TT lens, but the loveliest I ever did see was the night Dad died. he reunited with his bride, was tickled pink, and they danced with glee. I thank you for your gifts, Dad. I walk forward in gratitude, peace, and joy. You were Mom's poet prince, and she was your expected one. And I know that the only thing sweeter than union is reunion. Amen.
Our next hymn is He Leadeth Me, and I invite you to stand with your able. Ecclesiastes. For everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to throw away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for peace and a time for war. What gain have the workers from their toil? I have seen the business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, he's put a sense of past and future into their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. I know that there's nothing better for them than to be happy and enjoy themselves as long as they live. Moreover, it's God's gift that all should eat and drink and take pleasure in all their toil. I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done this so that all should stand in awe before him. That which is already has been, that which is to be already is, and God seeks out what has gone by. And a reading from the Psalms. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We're going to sing another hymn. It's How Great Thou Art, and I invite you to stand if you are able.
Thank
Gordon Wilder's play, Our Town. The recently deceased Emily Webb looks back to her earthly life. She wants to live just one single day. So she asks the stage manager, who serves as the narrator of the play, if she can return for a brief visit to her former life. Emily chooses her 12th birthday. She expects to be delighted by what she will see, and initially she is, but then she's surprised and saddened. For on this day, she finds her father consumed with his work, and her mother is preoccupied with kitchen duties. They don't have time, she says, to pay attention to each other or to life. And after a while, Emily pleads with her mother. "Oh, Mama, just look at me for one moment as if you really saw me. Just for a moment now, we're all together. Mama, just for a moment, let's be happy. We don't have time to look at one another. I didn't realize," she says. So all this was going on, and we never noticed. Emily is heartbroken by what she sees and pleads with the stage manager to return her up to the hill to her grave. But before she returns, she asks for one last look at her life. "Goodbye," she says. "Goodbye, goodbye, Grover's Corners, Mama and Papa. Goodbye to clocks ticking and Mama's sunflowers and food and coffee and new iron dresses and hot baths and sleeping and waking up. Oh, Earth, you're too wonderful for anybody to realize you." And then Emily looks at the stage manager through her tears and asks him, "Do any human beings ever realize life while they live it?" And the stage manager thinks for a moment and says, "No, well, the saints and the poets, maybe. They do some." The saints and the poets. Bob Irvine was both. Now, of course, Bob would have resisted the use of the title saint applied to him, for in common usage it means a life lived without moral imperfection or blemish, and we are all far too Presbyterian to believe that that is possible, or maybe even desirable. I would use the word saint not in the parochial use of the term according to the church in Rome, but rather saints are people through whom the light of God shines. They're not perfect people, but the light of God is refracted and reflected in their lives. And so I think we can agree then that we who have known Bob Irvine have indeed seen God's light through his life. Oh, here I have to offer my own memory and personal sense of gratitude for Bob and Marge's friendship and support, especially early on in my ministry here in Shakespeare. When after 10 years I left the congregation in 2003, I received a letter from Bob and Marge Irvine. It was a carefully typed out on Shakespeare greeting card letter. It was a beautiful, moving letter thanking me for my 10 years of ministry at Shakespeare. Little did they know that I would someday wander back like some old barn cat looking for a home. Maybe they wouldn't have written such a nice letter. The letter is effusive in its praise. I can hardly bear to read it. Let's just say it gave me a lot to live up to when I left here the first time. But I've kept that letter, and I don't read it every day, but on difficult days I take it out On days when I think I may have gone into the wrong vocation, when the wind has left my sails, I read that letter again and find words of encouragement and kindness and grace. Now, I say that, and I should also say that I have no doubt that Bob and Marge didn't always agree with everything I said or did as their minister. Especially in the early years, I was green, I was foolish, I made plenty of mistakes, I still do. But my foolishness was never an impediment to their friendship and support, which was as constant and as predictable as the sun that rises every single day. Bob was also, of course, a poet. We've heard that already. If you didn't know that, you received a copy of his poetry to enjoy. Poetry, I think, was his avocation. That is the thing that you love to do, for which you do not receive any monetary compensation. I remember visiting Bob just after he moved into the Maples, and I found him going down a list of the staff members there, making sure every single one of them had received a copy of his book of poetry. I know a few things for sure about Bob as the poet. You've already heard. First, he loved the poetry of Robert Service, and two, he believed that poetry should rhyme. Beyond this, he didn't believe in that new stuff that doesn't rhyme. It's not poetry. Beyond this, I think what you'll find when you read Bob's poetry is an appreciation for the created order and the beauty of ordinary things that, when viewed with a careful regard of a poet's eye, are really not ordinary at all, but extraordinary in the things that might make life rich and meaningful. Bob Irvine was a saint, a poet, and what I might also add today is that he was a storyteller. He was a gifted storyteller. In his later years, he was compiling together stories of the old days of the village here in Shakespeare. He told me many of these stories. They were stories that gave me the strong impression that not long ago Shakespeare was, well, it's kind of like the Wild West around here a little bit. Bob's stories often featured some of Shakespeare's more interesting residents, although I'm not sure interesting is a strong enough word to describe the people in these stories, but I think you know what I mean. These were stories full of grace and affection and lots of humor. And Bob would often tell me one of these stories, and at the end he would say the same thing every time. He'd say, Rob, well, that story, that's not going in my book. That one's not for print. I understand the project will likely not be completed, and, thinking about it, maybe it's just as well. For they are stories that needed Bob's voice, his particular inflection and turn of phrase. Of course, some of Bob's other stories came from his own experience in life, and if he visited the farm, then they were stories that often began in the kitchen, and the walls covered with pictures from a life well lived. Wonderful stories of adventure with Marge, stories inspired by artifacts, including a narwhal tusk in the living room, and sometimes ending with a game of pool in the rec room. Does that bother you to hear your minister plays pool with some of his parishioners? Can I tell you a secret? Being a minister is not always that difficult. Pastors are not supposed to have favorite parishioners, and we don't. But then again, these were not pastoral visits in the strictest sense, and not anything that could be construed as work. And I know that members of the care team here who were assigned to visit Bob, Steve Beckler and Peter Ross and some of the others, really grew to love this guy, to count on him as a friend. They felt the same way as I did. You always left encouraged, befriended, not burdened, feeling a little better about your own life and grateful. Because gratitude is a contagion, don't you know? And of course, always somewhat bemused at how once again the sacred goods had traveled in the reverse direction. There was a warmth about Bob, a givenness, a generosity, and in his presence we felt more human and more humane. Saint, poet, storyteller. There are, of course, many other words we might use to describe Bob Irvine. You'll have some words too, I'm sure. We are relieved, of course, of saying any ultimate or final word about the life of another human being, because the first and the last word belong to God. The first word God spoke in creation, and the last word we believe God has spoken in the life of Jesus Christ. And that is a word of forgiveness and acceptance and love. And it was this message that Jesus wished to convey to his own disciples when they were sorrowful, which I now, in his name, offer you. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Believe in God. Believe also in me. In your Father's house there are many dwelling places. If it were not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And I will come again, and I will take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also. Thanks be to God for Bob Irvine, saint, poet, storyteller, husband, father, grandfather, brother, friend, brother in Christ. Let us all pray. We seem to give them back to you, O God, who gave them to us. Yet as you did not lose them in giving, so we do not lose them by their return. Not as the world gives do you give. What you give, you take not away. For what is yours is ours also, if we are yours. And life is eternal, and love is immortal, and death is only a horizon, and a horizon is nothing save the limit of our sight. Lift us up, strong Son of God, that we may see further. Cleanse our eyes that we may see more clearly. Draw us closer to yourself that we may know ourselves to be near our loved ones who are with you. And while you prepare a place for us, prepare us also for that happy place, that where you are, we may be also forevermore. Oh God, you arrange us in families and give us friends for companionship. We acknowledge today our gratitude for Bob and rejoice in the love and friendship that we shared with him. For those gifts of mind, heart, and spirit which were uniquely his, for the grace at work in his life, for the good that entered the world through Bob, we bless you and give you praise. And now we thank you that for Bob's sorrow and sickness are ended, death itself is past, and he has entered into his eternal rest. Bestow your deep peace upon those who mourn. Walk with them in this time of sorrow until grief is overcome and thanksgiving and victory. Oh God, you have designed this world and know all things good for us. Give us such faith that by day and by night, in all times and in all places, we may without fear entrust those who are dear to us to your never-failing love in this life and in the life to come. God, we ask that you bless the gathering that follows our service today. That as we gather around table to share food and memories and stories and give thanks for the life of Bob's presence in our lives, may we eat and drink to your glory. These things we pray through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Our concluding hymn this afternoon is Abide With Me, and I invite you to stand if you're able.